Here's a look at the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2024. The 7 inductees were all officially enshrined on Saturday in Canton, Ohio. And one of the headliners, legendary returner Devin Hester. Hester has 19 career kickoff and punt return touchdowns, good for the most in the history of the league. Of course, everyone remembers his kickoff return TD to open Super Bowl 41. And here's Hester on making the Hall as a return specialist.
When I exploded on this scene, the professional scene, there was a lot of negativity because people didn't respect the return game. But eventually, they put in this new rule, which called, you guys know, the Devin Hester rule. The rule moved the kickoff up and made it easier for the kickers to kick it out the end zone, which eliminated me from getting a lot of returns. So I guess you can say the NFL started taking this return game seriously. I hope me being here today opens up the doors and brings some attention to other guys like Brian Mitchell and Josh Cribbs, because I'm not the only returner who deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm just the first.
Yes, sir. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, Julius Peppers makes the Hall of Fame on his first ballot. Peppers has the 4th most sacks of all time, 159.5, and is the only player in NFL history with 100+ sacks and 10 or more interceptions.
It's not about how many touchdowns you scored or how many Super Bowl rings you have, even though those things are nice. It really comes down to who you are at your core and what's in your heart. Are you resilient? Do you stand tall in the face of adversity when things get tough, or do you quit? Do you acknowledge other people's contributions to your success, or do you make it all about you? Being a Hall of Famer is one of my crowning achievements, but it extends far beyond pro football. It extends to my family, and it extends to my daily life. Everyone can't play in the NFL, and everyone can't have a bus here in Canton, but everyone can be a Hall of Famer in your own life. You can be a Hall of Fame dad, a Hall of Fame student, teacher, spouse, coworker, friend, whatever it is. Whatever it is that you do, do it with respect, integrity, passion, resilience, dedication, and gratitude. That alone will make you a Hall of Fame person, and you too can have a legacy that lives on forever. Thank you, and God bless.
Very well said. And another pass rusher joining Peppers is longtime Colt Dwight Freeney. He helped lead Indy to victory in Super Bowl 41, and he has the 2nd most sacks ever for a Colt and led the league in sacks back in 2004 with 16.
I always felt like I was an artist, and the football field was my canvas, and I was forever grateful for that feeling. One of the things that motivated me was never being completely satisfied with myself or my performance. It's what drove me to continue to improve my skill set and my mission to perfect my craft and try to dominate every single Sunday. I realized in order to win the battles on the field, I had to win the battles internally with myself. I had to keep pushing myself not to be complacent or lazy, and not to use excuses, and just make it happen.
And he sure did. Now, Patrick Willis played just 8 seasons in the NFL, but made a massive mark on the league during that time. He made 7 Pro Bowls, was named first-time All-Pro 5 times, tied for the 2nd most by a 49ers player in the Super Bowl era, one of the most athletic linebackers in the league's history.
Thank you for taking a chance on drafting a linebacker out of Ole Miss who hadn't won a lot of games, but still played each game as if it was his last chance. Today I stand before you with a heartfelt thank you to everyone who has played a part in my journey to Canton. When I say it takes a village, it truly does.
And on offense, the very first Houston Texan to ever make the Hall of Fame, wide receiver Andre Johnson. He's the franchise all-time leader in receptions, yards, and receiving touchdowns.
I can't lie. I'm happy as hell. I've reached the pinnacle. To be sitting up here with these guys I idolize, guys I wanted to be like, and now for them to be my teammates. To the team, the Houston Texans that are here, I'm happy as hell again to be your first Pro Football Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Such a special moment for all those guys. Time now to welcome in CBS Sports football analyst and two-time Super Bowl champ Brian McFadden. And B-Mac, Devin Hester, the first primary return specialist to make the Hall of Fame, and perhaps could be the last one. In your eyes, though, what made him so special and dynamic?
Chris, the element of fear. That is what Devin Hester provided. Any chance he had in catching a kickoff or a punt. Before you kick the football to Devin Hester, you were afraid. You were afraid that he was going to make everyone miss. You were afraid that he was going to put his offense in scoring position, or you were mostly afraid that he was actually going to score himself. So when you have that element to your game, no question, you're considered to be one of the all-time greats. And think about this, Chris. I played against Devin Hester quite a few times, going back to his collegiate days and, of course, in the National Football League. You never played against Devin Hester, Chris. But one would think, I would say, I don't want to speak for you, you were afraid knowing that the opposing team was going to kick to him because he had that type of mantra when it came to the game of football. So the element of fear is something that he presented week in and week out. And to his point, that's why they created the Devin Hester rule, to move the kickoffs up a bit, to kind of give the kickers an opportunity, an easier chance to kick the football out of the end zone than to allow a guy like Devin Hester to return it for a touchdown.
That's how much of a badass he was. The fact that they changed the rule because of how special he was. And you were right. Like, I never played against him, but every time I saw the TV was on, and he was returning punts or kickoffs, I was like, oh, Lord, if he gets the ball, he's going to take it all the way, or at least he's going to have like a 40 or 50-yard return. Now, also, we got to talk about these dynamic pass rushers, Julius Peppers, Dwight Freeney, going into the Hall of Fame. And I'm curious, in your eyes, how much does it help as a cornerback, a defensive back, to have those guys up front wreaking havoc while you are guarding your positions?
It helps tremendously because most quarterbacks that are going against those type of pass rushers, they will never have the luxury of getting comfortable in the pocket. It's almost every time they're dropping back for a pass, instantly you know one of those guys are going to get back to harass the quarterback, sack the quarterback, or rush the quarterback. And that's why they were so special. Two different players, right, Chris? You look at Dwight Freeney, smaller in measurables, but yet is still very, very explosive, had a unique first step, and then that massive spin. And then when you look at Julius Peppers, a basketball player playing football, right? A power forward playing the game of football, 6'5", 6'6", 260 plus, can run 4.5, 4.4, and super athletic. So when you look at the stature or the difference in statures between both guys, they weren't birthed the same when it came to being a pass rusher, but they both had the same effect on the game. And I can tell you this much, for all my Colts fans that are watching us, when you go back to Dwight Freeney in his prime days with the Colts back in that RCA Dome, where the noise was super, super loud, you couldn't hear anything, and with that being said, you had to go off a silent count, and that allowed Dwight Freeney to get off the football even faster than most guys. Good luck in thinking you're going to have success against a guy like Dwight Freeney. So one of the all-time greats. He was an outstanding player in college at Syracuse. That transitioned nicely in the National Football League, and because of that, he has his ultimate place in Canton, Ohio, in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, truly elite players, and like you said, they came in different sizes, but they were dedicated to the crafts, and that is why they are in the Hall of Fame. Now, you know we have to talk about Mr. Andre Johnson, first ever Texan to make the Hall of Fame. Just Mr. Consistent in my eyes, no matter who his QB was. He embodied a silent dog, right? Because he didn't talk a whole lot, and you played against him during your career, both when you were at Florida State and with the Steelers. How difficult was he to guard, man?
Well, very, very difficult because he always had a matchup in his favor. He was bigger than most cornerbacks that he faced against, and he was faster than most as well. And for me, I don't want to say I had the luxury of facing off against Dre in college, but that was a responsibility of mine, and I got an early, great insight about who he is, because you talk about a guy being 6'3", running low 4.3s, super athletic, very, very strong at the point of attack. It was like, man, coach, how are we supposed to get this job done in covering this guy man-to-man? And then when he transitioned to the National Football League and we got a chance to face off also, then we needed to have a big-time pass rush to be successful against Dre. Because to your point, it didn't matter who was throwing him the football, he was going to give you big numbers. And because of that, he is in Canton, Ohio right now, going into the Hall of Fame. And most wide receivers, they don't have that same impact, right? When you look at wide receivers that we've watched year after year in the National Football League, a lot of their success has to do with who is throwing them the football. To Andre Johnson's point, when you talk about his on-the-football field production, it didn't matter. He still lived up. He still gave you big-time numbers, and also while seeing double coverage. So most of the times, a lot of guys had safety help over the top. And if that safety wasn't really over the top, you better believe he was shading to number 80's side, because he was that type of player for the Houston Texans. And as he stated, he is their first Hall of Famer in organizational history. Probably won't be the last, but when you're the first, you know it means something.
Absolutely. Now, we talk about two-time Super Bowl champ, QB, and Giants legend Eli Manning. He's eligible for the Hall of Fame for 2025, and it's one of the biggest debates about whether he should be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Where do you stand on that conversation, man?
Oh, Chris, this is going to be an ongoing debate until that list is actually released. So I see it from two different sides. Number one, let me answer your question first. Where I stand, I don't think Eli Manning is a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I do believe he will go in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. But let me give you my reason why I don't think he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. When you look at a Hall of Fame-like career, Super Bowls are important, but I don't think they should be the most important thing. The Hall of Fame, last time I checked, Chris, it's an individual accolade. It's not about the team. It's more about you as an individual and what you did to help the team, which is important. So I think the individual status should trump the Super Bowl status. To my point with that, when you look at Eli Manning's career, at what point would you say Eli was considered a top 3 quarterback in the National Football League during his career? At what point? Heck, I'll go back one further. At what point would you say he was a top 4 quarterback throughout his years in the National Football League? Now, to Eli Manning's displeasure, he played with Tom Brady, not with, but in the same era as Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, a lot of big-name quarterbacks. But I would like to have that answer from you at some point in time. You can't say he was ever considered a top 3 guy. You can't say he was ever considered a top 4 guy. No knock on Eli, because he still had an outstanding career, but just from the individual argument, right? Now, when you talk about what he did during those Super Bowl runs, outstanding playoff run, will forever go down in playoff history when you talk about what he did and what his team did. But I feel like for Eli Manning, the 2 Super Bowls will jump in front of the individual success. The 2 Super Bowls will jump in front of the individual argument, which would lead to him potentially being a first ballot. But I feel like if you look at some of the other quarterbacks that were first ballots, when you look at some of the other positional players that were considered first ballots, at some point in their career, they were considered a top 1, a top 2, a top 3 guy in their position. And for a few of those guys, they held on to that spot a few years in the National Football League. I don't know if you can really say the same for Eli Manning throughout his prime years while playing for the New York Giants.
I was trying to think of any quarterbacks I was trying to think if he actually was a top 3 quarterback or top 4 at any point during his career. And when you look at the totality of all the quarterbacks that were playing, he was never a top 4 QB. again, doesn't, take away from his greatness in the playoffs, but you're right. He was not a top 3 or top 4 QB, even had his peak. Now, when you look at the rest of this potential 2025 class, who do you have on your Hall of Fame ballot for that year?
Oh, man, listen, it's an outstanding list of guys, and unfortunately, everyone can't get in. But there are a few guys I would like to highlight when it comes to guys I think will get in. Like I said, I think Eli, will be a first ballot, but I just gave you my reasons why I think he probably shouldn't be considered a first ballot. But these are some of the notable names. But guys who I think will get in, Antonio Gates. The argument that I gave for Eli or against Eli, you can't really say that. Antonio Gates, throughout his prime years, was in the top 3 of all tight ends in the National Football League, right? The way he changed the game from the tight end position will forever be felt. I think he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Look at James Harrison. Look at his road to success while doing it for one of the more storied franchises in the National Football League in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Throughout his prime years in Pittsburgh, when he really cracked into the starting lineup, he's one of the best pass rushers in the National Football League. Won Defensive Player of the Year as also, along with 2 Super Bowls, and will forever be known to have one of the more monumental Super Bowl plays ever in the game today until we see otherwise. So James Harrison, Torrey Holt, he's been a finalist for 10 years now. At some point in time, when you look at what he did during his career, you look at that great offense he was a part of, Super Bowl winning offense, the greatest show on turf. That name would not be fulfilled if Torrey Holt wasn't a part of their offense. I think at some point, this could be the year for him to get in. Anquan Bolden, name me another gutsy wide receiver. The argument, what you gave us with Andre Johnson, more of a silent assassin, didn't really say a lot. The same could be said for Quan, but his impact was felt every Sunday. Jumping out his rookie year, he kind of took the league by storm instantly when he got drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, his first regular season game against the Detroit Lions. Reggie Wayne, a guy who I faced off against quite a few times. We talk about Peyton Manning, you talk about Edgerrin James, you talk about Marvin Harrison Sr. Reggie Wayne also is a name that was a part of that prolific offense. I think he should get his name called. And last for me is Fred Taylor. When you look at when Fred Taylor played the game in the National Football League, in his prime, if you ask any defender that at some point in time played against Fred Taylor, who was one of the more difficult running backs, who was one of the more fearful running backs, strong, just a do-it-all type back that you faced in your career during those years that Fred was in Jacksonville, 9 times out of 10, that defender will say number 28 down in Duval. When it comes to his peers, we felt like he was a Hall of Famer a long, long time ago. Unfortunately for the voters, they haven't caught wind of that yet. Hopefully they catch wind of that this season, because when I tell you some of the backs that I faced off against throughout my professional career, LaDainian Tomlinson, who else we have? It was Arian Foster, Corey Dillon, Rudy Johnson, Tiki Barber, it's Warwick Duns, Michael Turner. A lot. Let's say that. Fred Taylor is one of the top dogs to ever do it, and it's a shame that he hasn't been able to get into the Hall yet. Hopefully, he hears his name called, because he's more than deserving of getting that opportunity.
I was going to say, he was one of the coldest running backs that I've seen, in the league's history, and maybe it's because Jacksonville didn't have that much success, but for you to say that, that's definitely a great endorsement, and hopefully he will have his name get enshrined into the Hall of Fame. Brian McFadden, we appreciate the time, man.
Yes, sir.
So here are other notable first-year players eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We talked about Eli Manning. How about Marshawn Lynch, Beast Mode, Darren Sproles, Luke Kuechly, Clay Matthews, Terrell Suggs, Adam Vinatieri, and Joe Staley. All those guys, they had some great, really great careers. Coming up, Team USA, Anthony Edwards had a little bit of trouble against Puerto Rico early, but in the end, was the Ant-Man taking over the show? We'll let you know and have a recap of their win over Puerto Rico next.